Chapter 5. Big Boys Don't Cry. I have counseled boys in therapy for over 25 years. Prior to that, starting at age 16, I was a camp counselor and then a child care worker. And before that, I was a boy. So I know a little bit about them. Put a group of males together, and their physicality, exuberance, and energy are difficult to contain. Boys can be wonderfully rambunctious and mischievous. Often, the only way to rein one in is to tire him out. Though they are competitive and aggressive, there is also simplicity to their relationships. Tempers flare quickly, but boys do not stay angry for long. They respond to an insult by throwing back a clever retort or even a punch, and the conflict is soon forgotten. Girl squabbles, on the other hand, take days to resolve through an indirect web of ever-changing alliances. When I was a camp counselor, the girl staff spent much of their time mending hurt feelings, while on the boys' side, we tended to bruises, bloody noses, and broken bones. As simple as a boy's life can be, growing into manhood is no small challenge. In his Time magazine cover story, The Myth About Boys, David Von Drell writes, "The cultivation of boys has been an obsession for thousands of years." He invokes Socrates, who asked, "How shall we find a gentle nature which also has a great spirit?" In order to understand the opt-out phenomenon, you have to appreciate how hard it is to become a man. Unlike girls, whose femininity is rarely called into question, teenage boys must constantly prove their masculinity. A boy's manhood is continually tested, and unlike his school exams, these are tests he cares deeply about passing. Anything but feminine. Boys love to compete, especially to prove who is the toughest. Those spirited 10-year-old boys I encountered as a camp counselor were forever trying to best one another. Who was the fastest, who was the funniest, who could fart the loudest, or burp the alphabet. They were constantly teasing each other and putting one another down. The key was to show no pain, hide any hurt feelings, recover with a quick comeback, and move on. There was, however, one put down that was feared above all others: faggot. Even today, when homosexuality is more socially accepted than ever before, the word gay is still thrown around the halls and locker rooms of middle and high schools to signify weakness, the ultimate male put down. No one said managing adolescence is easy for a girl. She may be called a poser, hoe, slut, or stuck up, but chances are good that her womanhood will likely never be called into question. Boys, on the other hand, not only feel the pressure to appear masculine, according to the best-selling book Raising Cain, Protecting the Emotional Life of Boys by Dan Kinlone and Michael Thompson, but they feel that in doing so, they must be clearly not feminine, and so they consciously and deliberately attack in others and in themselves traits that might possibly be defined as feminine. This includes tenderness, empathy, compassion, and any show of emotional vulnerability. A boy's credo is anything but feminine, ABF. Boys definitely want girls' attention, but it is other boys they look to for validation of their masculinity. Your son's idea of masculinity is defined by a group of boys his age who are as clueless as he is about what it means to be a man. Teenage boys, insecure about who they are and how to fit in, look up to peers who seem to have it figured out, like the best athletes or the cool dudes. And because it is so dangerous to be weak, boys form a rigid, exaggerated male ideal, one reinforced by our culture and modeled after the invulnerable and invincible. Professional athletes, rap singers, superheroes, action movie stars, and even video game warriors. To be masculine is to walk a tightrope, and any small step off the narrow path is perilous. A patient in his early 20s recalled, as a teen, wanting to be like his anime hero from a popular Japanese cartoon. He made the girls drool. He was stoic and had a mysterious past. That is what I tried to be. a dark, ironic anti-hero. Another patient, 15 years old, described his own struggle this way. Masculinity provides a safety net for someone who does not know who they are. It is okay to try on different shoes. If you really do not know who you are, it is better to try to be like someone else than to be someone lost. Teenage boys form a boy credo whose primary tenet is ABF. Much of the homophobia expressed when boys call each other faggot is not even about being gay. It's about boys' fear that other boys will see them as feminine. The unspoken oath of boyhood is that you will not be a sissy, nerd, wimp, or wuss. Big boys don't cry. The boy code training starts early. Starting at around 4 years old, boys are told, big boys don't cry. And this is just the beginning. Beyond faggot and gay, boys are constantly told by their friends, coaches, and even fathers not to be a pussy or a little girl. Then there are the admonitions to be more masculine, grow a pair, man up, and act like a man. In our sports-crazed culture, the sideline ethos is to shake off an injury and get back in the game. It's no wonder that concussions have risen to epidemic proportions in sports at every level. Masculinity is measured in numbers, how tall you are, how fast you can run. As boys grow older, this changes to how many girls you can get into the sack, and how much money you make. Boys and men are forever comparing themselves to one another. This leads to endless teasing, mostly done in fun, about any quirky behavior or physical characteristic. Nicknames abound in the world of boys. A guy with pimples is known to his friends as a pizza face. A pale-skinned teen is called Casper, the friendly ghost, by his fraternity brothers, and a football player's nickname, Thunder, short for Thunder Thighs, is used even by his teachers and coaches, but not his mother, who still calls him William. However, this measuring up has a dark side. In order to fit in, boys must play a role, and to do that, they must sacrifice their authenticity. The stoic hero. When academics write about masculinity, they speak in terms of a performance. James Malik's research has identified several scripts that men follow: strong and silent, tough guy, the playboy, and the true competitor. A boy's only option is to play the role of the stoic hero, to never complain or show pain, and to always remain steadfast and confident. A stoic is tough and capable, and he believes that action speaks louder than words. In describing his father's stoicism, author Jeffrey Marks wrote, "Highs and lows were for the weatherman reporting the temperature. My dad's emotional thermometer was generally stuck somewhere in the moderate middle. I always knew that he had strong beliefs because he showed them through his actions, never wavering in his commitments to family, always doing the right thing, and especially treating other people well. But actually talk about his feelings and emotions, express them in words. No. That was a foreign concept for my dad. Since dependency and neediness are off limits, men face a do not enter sign when they approach intimate connections. An adolescent boy's relationship with his mother is particularly threatening because she is the person whom, up until recently, he relied upon most. Mama's boy. If faggot tops the list of emasculating insults, mama's boy runs a close second. The female counterpart to mama's boy is daddy's girl, which is hardly a put-down. This is because, in order for a boy to become a man, he has to separate from his mother in a way that girls do not. As infants and toddlers, both boys and girls both want to be like their mommy. It's okay for little boys to play with dolls or a toy kitchen, up to a point. At about the same time boys are told to hold back the tears, around age 4, they are also encouraged to cut the apron strings. The sociologist Nancy Cotera suggests that because a boy's first attachment is to his mother, in order to become a man, he must eventually renounce his connection. This is where ABF originates. Masculinity is defined from the start in negative terms, not being like mom. While boys are discouraged from being too close to their mothers, girls never have to fully separate. As the old adage goes, a son is a son till he gets a wife, but a daughter is a daughter all of her life. Girls don't have to choose. They can remain dependent on their parents, though certainly giving them hell during the teenage years, yet still feel independent. A boy, on the other hand, feels ashamed of his desire for approval and dependency because it makes him feel too needy and is therefore unacceptable. So he keeps his emotional distance, retreats into his room, and when necessary, asserts his independence by opposition and fighting. This quest for masculinity makes a teenage boy's journey over the bridge of ambivalence even more complicated. Being dependent results in the double whammy of being both a child and also being feminine. The alpha male. Making intimacy off limits has repercussions for male friendships. Boys view relationships as hierarchical, forever jockeying for a position of power. They must always appear knowledgeable. Girls, in comparison, live in a social world of constantly shifting rivalries and alliances, and they derive status from whom they know. For boys, it's not who, but what you know, and what you can do. The boy who can hit a ball out of the park, or is the first to best the newest version of Call of Duty, is the one who will earn the respect of his peers. Listen to a group of men discuss last night's basketball game. On the surface, it sounds as though they are just talking sports, but lurking just below is a competition about who knows more. Middle and high school boys brag mainly about things like a sports achievement or a weekend hookup, but never about getting the lead in the school play or scoring a violin solo for the spring concert. As we will explore in the next chapter, masculinity goes hand in hand with athleticism, but never comes from making the honor roll. Research has shown that because boys do not like to talk about themselves the way that girls do, they tend to hang out around a specific activity. I know that during biking season, I may talk to my riding buddies for hours, but I rarely see them when my bike is put down for the winter. Deborah Tannen, a linguist who focuses on gender differences, has very interesting things to say about how differently men and women relate. For example, in studying what children and teens do when asked to talk about a serious subject, she found that 6th grade girls have no difficulty discussing feelings and friendship. As you might expect, their male counterparts could not sit still, and though they rambled from topic to topic, the subject of feelings and friendship rarely came up. By 10th grade, the girls' growing comfort with intimacy was apparent in how they pulled their chairs close together and made eye contact when talking. The boys may as well have been seated in church pews. They sat parallel to one another, eyes focused dead ahead. Surprisingly, from this detached, shoulder-to-shoulder posture, the boys were able to open up. Generally, boys are able to form close friendships until they are young teens. But sadly, as they age, males tend to become more distrustful of their peers, leaving them feeling isolated and alone. Perhaps at some time in our primordial past, the instinct to mate forced men to see one another as competitors. I suspect, however, that the tendency of men to move away from one another has more to do with the qualification I hear over and over when teenage patients describe their close male friends: no homo. Can you imagine a woman referring to her girlfriend, adding a qualifier like, "She's not my lesbian lover, just a friend"? Ridiculous. Feelings, a no man's land. Without any safe way to understand or express their feelings, boys are left with only two possibilities. The first is to withdraw, which may be the only way your son knows to deal with his feelings of self-doubt, inadequacy, and fear. The second, less desirable way is to act out feelings by fighting. being oppositional, or engaging in delinquent activities. Anger is the only feeling that boys and men can safely express. It's easier for them to get mad than sad. Men use a triad of psychological defenses to shut down their feelings: avoidance, compartmentalization, and denial. As a parent of an opt-out, you know all about avoidance. It's like a magic wand your son waves across anything that makes him feel anxious. Then poof, it's gone. No more history paper, no more anxiety. Anxiety itself is not a feeling. It's a signal of impending danger, real or imagined. In this case, the danger is becoming a failure. Procrastination is just avoidance by another name. If your son was Pinocchio, he'd have a very long nose because avoidance is predicated on a series of small lies he tells himself. I will do it in 5 minutes, or this will be easy. And then there are the ones he tells you, like, I will take out the trash, wash the dishes, clean my room, do my homework, later. Compartmentalization is a way of quarantining feelings that accompany any difficult situation, for instance, a marital spat over breakfast, in order to function at work, school, or anywhere else. This coping strategy is summed up by the phrase, out of sight, out of mind. Feelings surrounding emotional events are packed up and stored away like Christmas ornaments in January. One patient struggling with cancer put it this way: I visualize a series of boxes in my head, and I keep them locked up. I open them up in therapy, but sometimes not even there. The danger is that these feelings can be pushed out altogether, which is the definition of denial. Denial requires rewriting history. I never said that. I don't have a drinking problem. My grades are absolutely fine, often with grievous consequences. Behind their superhero capes and underneath their helmets and shoulder pads, however, boys do have feelings, and these feelings can get hurt. The toughness and detachment boys display are carefully honed to mask pain and vulnerability. Teenage boys do feel needy, just as they long for love and acceptance. But they do not have the words to describe these emotions, nor the insight to understand them. For many men, sexual intimacy is the only kind of closeness they can tolerate. Only in the bedroom can they experience vulnerability and dependency, which they do under the guise of satisfying their libido. When a man says, I have needs, he thinks he is referring to one organ and doesn't realize he also means another, his heart. Today's hookup culture offers a detached sexuality that does not require any emotional intimacy. This type of sexuality is reinforced by all the pornography your son is watching. I have seen many boys confused by frequent hookups with an FWB, friend with benefits. Unsure what to do or how to feel, or worried that they have landed themselves in a relationship, they just ghost the girl. They stop talking to her and move on. Behind the mask. In order to survive, men live behind what William Pollock, author of Real Boys, one of the first books about boys, calls the mask of masculine bravado. This mask allows boys and men to cut themselves off from any feelings that society teaches them are unacceptable, by hiding their true, genuine selves. This mask also affords a man the only protection he knows against one of the most complicated emotions, shame. When it comes to understanding shame, I turn to the work of Brené Brown. If you haven't already done so, check out her TED Talks, Listening to Shame, and the Power of Vulnerability. Brown points out the difference between shame and guilt. Guilt means you did something wrong. Shame means that you are wrong. The feeling that your thoughts or actions will force others to reject or even banish you, and that you are unworthy of human connection. Hester Prynne's shame was made public by the scarlet A she was forced to wear. In Leviticus, God provides a scapegoat for the difficult emotion, upon which the Jews could unload their shame every year and banish it to the wilderness. Brown's research demonstrates that men and women have different triggers for shame. For men, shame is elicited by a direct hit across the bow of masculinity. For boys, particularly male teens, there are many missiles to duck, such as being homesick, being picked on, or worse, picked last, getting beat up, giving up, being scared off, too small, or too prudish, striking out, or breaking down. Women, on the other hand, feel shame when they let someone down. Women are trained to be all things to all people, to meet everyone's needs, and to do so looking like they just stepped off the cover of Vogue or Cosmo. Because women are primed to be caregivers, motherhood is a battleground for shame. Much of their self-worth rests on the shoulders of their children's happiness. Fathers, of course, are equally invested in the well-being of their offspring, but their self-esteem tends to be offset by career success. In either case, relying on parenting success to feel good about yourself puts you on a collision course with your opting out son. That's part 1. I'll read part 2 in the next video.